Section 20 of A Visit to the Holy Land. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 10 of A Visit to the Holy Land, Egypt and Italy, Part 2. By Ida L. Pfeiffer. June 16th. At 5 o'clock in the morning we took leave of our host, and returned in 6 hours to Nazareth by the same road on which we had already travelled. We did not, however, ascend Mount Tabor a second time, but rode along beside its base. Today I once more visited all the spots I had seen when I was so ill 2 days before. In this pursuit I passed some very agreeable hours. June 17th. In the morning, at 4:30, we once more bade farewell to the worthy priests of Nazareth, and rode without stopping for 9 hours and a half, until at 2 o'clock we reached Mount Carmel. It was long since we had travelled on such a good road as that on which we journeyed today. Now and then, however, a piece truly Syrian in character had to be encountered, probably lest we should lose the habit of facing hardship and danger. Another comfort was that we were not obliged today to endure thirst, as we frequently passed springs of good clear water. At one time our way even led through a small oak wood, a phenomenon almost unprecedented in Syria. There was certainly not a single tree in all the wood which a painter might have chosen for a study, for they were all small and crippled. Large leafy trees, like those in my own land, are very seldom seen in this country. The carob, which grows here in abundance, is the only handsome tree. It has a beautiful leaf, scarcely larger than that of a rose tree, of an oval form, as thick as the back of a knife, and of a beautiful bright green color. Mount Carmel lies on the seashore. It is not high, and half an hour suffices the traveller to reach its summit, which is crowned by a spacious and beautiful convent, probably the handsomest in all Palestine, not even excepting the monasteries at Nazareth and Jerusalem. The main front of the building contains a suite of 6 or 7 large rooms, with folding doors and lofty regular windows. These rooms, together with several in the wings, are devoted to the reception of strangers. They are arranged in European style, with very substantial pieces of furniture, among which neither sofas nor useful chests of drawers are wanting. About an hour after we arrived, our reverend hosts regaled us with a more sumptuous meal than any of which I had partaken since my departure from Constantinople. In proportion as our fare had been meagre and our accommodation indifferent at Nazareth and Jerusalem, did we find everything here excellent. In an elegant dining room stood a large table covered with a fine white cloth, on which cut glass and clean knives, forks, and china plates gleamed invitingly. A servant in European garb placed some capital fast day fare on the table (it was Friday), and a polite priest kept us company, but not in eating, for he rightly considered that such a hungry company would not require any example to fall to. During the whole remainder of our journey through Syria this convent occupied a green spot in our memory. How capitally would a few days' rest here have recruited our strength! But the gentlemen had a distant goal before their eyes, and "forward" was still the cry. After dinner we went down to the seashore to visit the large grotto called the Prophet's School. This grotto has really the appearance of a lofty and spacious hall, where a number of disciples could have sat and listened to the words of the Prophet. The grotto in which Elijah is said to have lived is situated in a church at the top of the mountain. Mount Carmel is quite barren, being only covered here and there with brambles, but the view is magnificent. In the foreground the eye can roam over the boundless expanse of ocean, while at the foot of the mountain it affords a resting place in the considerable town of Haifa, lying in a fertile plain, which extends to the base of the high mountains, bounded in the distance by the Anti-Libanus, and farther still by the Lebanon itself. Along the line of coast we can distinguish Acre or Ptolemais, Sur, Tyre, and Soida, Sidon. June 18th. This morning we sent our poor, overtired horses on before us to Hessa, and walked on foot at midday under a temperature of 33 degrees to Haifas, a distance of more than 2 miles. Heated and exhausted to the last degree we reached the house of the consul, who is a Catholic, but seems nevertheless to live in quite an Oriental fashion. This gentleman is consul both for France and Austria. Although he was not at home when we arrived, we were immediately shown into the room of state, where we reclined on soft divans and were regaled with sherbet of all colors, green, yellow, red, etc., and with coffee flavored with roses, which we did not like. Hookahs, or chibuks, were also handed round. At length the consul's wife appeared, a young and beautiful lady of an imposing figure, dressed in the Oriental garb. She smoked her chibuk with as much ease as the gentleman. Luckily a brother of this lady who understood something of Italian was present, and kindly acted as interpreter. I have never found an Oriental woman who knew any language but that of her own country. After we had rested ourselves, we pursued our journey in a boat to Acre. On my road to Jerusalem I had only seen the outside of this monument of the last war. Now I could view its interior, but saw nothing to repay me for my trouble. Considering how ugly the Turkish towns are even when they are in good preservation, it may be easily imagined that the appearance of one of these cities is not improved when it is full of shot holes, and the streets and interiors of the houses are choked up with rubbish. The entrance to the convent lies through the courtyard of the Turkish barracks, where there seemed to be a great deal of bustle, and where we had an opportunity of noticing how wretchedly clad, and still more miserably shod, the Turkish soldiers are. These blemishes are not so much observed when the men are seen singly at their posts. The convent here is very small, being in fact only a dwelling house to which a chapel is attached. 2 monks and a lay brother form the whole household. Scarcely had I established myself in my room, before a very polite lady entered, who introduced herself to me as the wife of a surgeon in the service of the Pasha here. She stated that her husband was at present absent at Constantinople, and added that she was in the habit of spending several hours in the convent every evening to do the honors of the house. This assertion struck me as so strange that I should certainly have remained dumb had not my visitor been a very agreeable, polite French lady. As it was, however, we chatted away the evening pleasantly together, until the supper bell summoned us to the refectory. All that I saw in this convent was in direct contrast to the arrangements of the comfortable establishment of the Carmelites. The refectory here is astonishingly dirty. The whole furniture consists of 2 dingy tables and some benches. The tablecloth, plates, etc., wore the prevailing livery, and the fare was quite in keeping with everything else. We supped at 2 tables, the gentleman and the Reverend Father sitting at one, while the French lady and myself occupied the other. June 19th. As we were not to travel far to-day, we did not set out until 10 o'clock, when we started in company of several Franks who were in the Pasha's service. They led us into a park by the roadside belonging to the mother of the Sultan. Here the Pasha usually resides during the summer. In half an hour's time we reached this park. The garden is rather handsome, but does not display many plants except lemon, orange, pomegranate, and cypress trees. The display of flowers was not very remarkable, for not only could we discover no rare or foreign plants, but we also missed many flowers which grow plentifully in our gardens at home. A few kiosks are here to be seen, but everything seemed miserably out of repair. The residence of the Pasha, situated outside the gardens, has a more inviting appearance. We paid our respects to his Highness, who received us very graciously, and caused us to be regaled with the usual beverages. No sooner had the high ladies in the harem learnt that a Frankish woman was in their territory, than they sent to invite me to visit them. I gladly accepted this invitation, the more so as it offered an opportunity of gratifying my curiosity. I was conducted to another part of the house, where I stepped into a chamber of middle size, the floor of which was covered with mats and carpets, while on cushions ranged round the walls reclined beauties of various complexions, who seemed to have been collected from every quarter of the globe. One of these women, who was rather elderly, appeared to be the Pasha's chief wife, for all the rest pointed to her. The youngest lady seemed about 18 or 19 years of age, and was the mother of a child 8 years old, with which they were all playing as with a doll. The poor little thing was handed about from hand to hand. These ladies were dressed exactly like the daughters of the consul at Joppa, whose costume I have described.